SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, we'll chat to the Botswana Athletics Association Vice President just about how much it will cost the country to host the World Athletics Relay Championships, and then the London Marathon prize money, one of the best in the world. Details of these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
It is a very good afternoon to you, Algeria. Good afternoon, Benin, Burkina Faso, Cameroon. Good afternoon to you, Côte d'Ivoire, Egypt, Eritrea, Eswatini, Gabon. Good afternoon, Africa. Welcome to Africa in Business on Channel Africa. I'm Thami Ngubeni. This is where you get the African perspective. It's where we meet to look at the latest in business, news and sport. We are broadcasting live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg, South Africa. You can catch us on DSTV Audio Bouquet channel 802, on OpenView on channel 628, and you can also live stream us on www.channelafrica.co.za. We are also available on the SABC Plus app, which you can get on Google and Apple Play stores. You are invited to continue interacting with us on all our various social media platforms. On X, Facebook and YouTube, you'll find us at Channel Africa 1. On Facebook, we are at Channel Africa. It's gone exactly 7 minutes after 4 p.m.
Africa in Business. Africa in Business delivers key insights and real-time updates on Africa's growing markets with Thami Ngubeni. The African Perspective on Channel Africa.
Channel Africa.
We begin here this afternoon. A high court in South Africa has suspended a 0.5% VAT increase, which was set for May the 1st, 2025. This is after a challenge by the Democratic Alliance and the Economic Freedom Fighters political parties. The Commissioner of the South African Revenue Services, Edward Kisfeter, has welcomed the ruling, urging vendors and consumers to maintain the 15% VAT rate. The country's Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, withdrew the hike last week, with the court ratifying the decision on April the 27th.
SARS has welcomed the decision because it brings legal certainty. Some of the issues are still up for debate and will be ventilated in court. And SARS is not necessarily a view on other than always honoring the outcomes of legal process. Now, what the court order yesterday helps us is in the administration of the VAT Act. And uncertainty or lack of clarity is not helpful for us as the administrator, neither is it helpful for taxpayers and traders or vendors. And ultimately, it could compromise consumers at the point of sale. And so the advice that we have given to vendors, notwithstanding the fact that we know this has some challenges for them because many vendors and retailers have already adjusted their system. They've sent out advisors to their different clients about the adjustment. They now have to not only reverse this, they also have to adjust their systems. And what we are saying is, hopefully, most of them will be able to do so, and the large ones have given us the assurance that they will unwind the adjustment and stick with the 15%. We certainly are pulling back on the implementation of the 15.5%. But we have also received feedback from some vendors that it'll be a challenge for them to make the reversal in time. Here we are advising consumers to be vigilant that at the point of sale, they must make sure their invoice reflects a 15% VAT inclusion and not a 15.5% inclusion. The consumer has to insist for a manual adjustment at the
Yes.
point of sale. And that's why our public notice has also drawn attention to consumers to be vigilant. We believe most of the large retailers and service providers will make the adjustment in time, but as is the case with the best plans, we suspect that a few of the smaller vendors may not be able to make these adjustments. And there, a vigilance at the point of sale, an insistence on a manual adjustment or by some mutual agreement to ensure that the effective increase that is imputed is only 15%. We will continue to work with vendors to make them aware, make it easy for them to comply. But over the next few months, we will increase our level of vigilance. We have shared with the public before, we have risk detection AI that we use. We will calibrate that AI to have a look at a higher sample of VAT returns to make sure, in fact, that the 15% is complied with.
That was SARS Commissioner Edward Kisfiter. He takes us to exactly 11 minutes after 4 p.m. Now, South African supermarkets have seen an increase in beef prices as they battle a shortage of slaughter-ready cattle. The shortage has been attributed to the weather conditions that have pushed up livestock feeding costs. There have been concerns that the foot and mouth disease in some parts of the country may also push up the prices. For more on this, we joined this afternoon by Dewald Olivier, the CEO of Red Meat Industry Services. A very good afternoon to you, Dewald. Welcome to Africa in Business.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for having me.
So a couple of reasons have been put forward as far as why the beef prices have increased as they have. Talk to us about the weather conditions that have been highlighted and what impact that they've had on production.
I think if we look at the weather conditions, we need to go back to about a year ago, roughly November 2023. I think that's when it started in our cycle. We've got a statutory levy. And if we go back to that cycle from November 2023 until 2024, what we saw was mainly drought conditions up until the end of November last year when it started raining. And before that, obviously, a lot of the cattle had to be slaughtered by farmers. They couldn't necessarily keep the animals on the field, on the veld. And what they did was they slaughtered cows mainly. And then obviously, when we look at now in our weaning season, which is actually starting now, we saw that there's less cows, which means there's less weaner calves, which creates a squeeze with regards to that. So on the one hand, we've got the drought of last year. Then on the other hand, we've got a lot of rain that's still going on at this stage, and which makes it very difficult to load cattle on farms. And that actually also contributes to what we're seeing now.
And can you help us understand why there had to be a forced slaughtering of cattle due to the El Nino season?
Yeah, I think the main thing is obviously there's not enough grass, there's not enough feed. So farmers would rather slaughter the animals and put them in the market than see them suffer. They would look after their cattle and ensure that the cattle do not suffer, so they would rather slaughter them than not having enough feed for them. That's the main reason.
Could you help us understand the severity of the shortage?
I don't think it's that bad at this stage. I think it's a normal. I think the economy is actually correcting itself at this stage with regards to beef prices. I don't think it is bad in any sense. I don't think it will last very long. And at the end of the day, it's temporary, very temporary, and it will regulate itself and pull itself together again. It's really not that big. There's no shortage of beef at all. It is supply and demand, and I think that's what it is at this stage, yes.
So if we take a look at KwaZulu-Natal and also the Eastern Cape province, they've been dealing with the outbreak of foot and mouth disease. Has this impacted production at all?
Not up until now. So you must remember that feedlots, mainly 80% of all beef, if we just talk beef, 80% of all beef consumed within South Africa comes through the feedlotting system. And if we look what happened in Eastern Cape about a year ago with the outbreak there, that was mainly in dairy cattle. That was dairy herds that tested positive for foot and mouth disease. The current outbreak that we see in KZN is a little bit different, but it's only weaning season now. So those weaner calves will only be in 80%, if we say 80% goes to the feedlotting system, 80% of those calves will only be in our system for slaughter ready between 4 and 6 months from now on. So it will have no impact currently.
And if we look at beef exports, this was also highlighted and pinpointed as a contributor to the shortages. What is your take on this?
We have increased our exports, definitely because, as I mentioned, we had more beef last year because more cattle were slaughtered due to the drought effect, and we did export more, but it has no effect currently. It has stabilized again, and we're back to normal figures or normal kilograms being exported. So we wouldn't have that much of an effect at this stage currently in our system.
As an industry that focuses on red meat, as the red meat industry, that's who you are. Are you optimistic that the price squeeze that's currently being felt by the consumer will ease in the coming months? You did mention it, that it's regulating itself. And do you have perhaps a time frame as to when it would reach normality?
Yeah, time frame is a little bit difficult. How long is a piece of string? And yes, I think it will ease. It will definitely ease. I don't think this can last very long. At the end of the day, we see that it's all about supply and demand, and I think we've got very quickly we can see when there is consumer resistance towards the product, especially in beef. So I think once that happens, the price will settle down. But at this stage, it will remain high for a while.
Thank you so much for your insight this afternoon, Dewald. That's Dewald Olivier, the CEO of Red Meat Industry Services. He takes us to exactly 17 minutes after 4 p.m.
Zochitika ndi madaphiri kamlondola wa zochitika pena paliponse.
Aphungu a nyumba ya malamulo mu dziko la Malawi akuchita zokambirana zawo pa zinthu zosiyanasiyana pambuyo pa nyumbayi kutsegulidwa masiku apitawo, ndipo kondani nyamasa ukali nafe pompano chiyambireni aphungu akukambirana masiku apitawo ndi zovuta ziti zomwe zachitika mu nyumba imeneyi ya malamulo.
Ndingathe kunena kuti State of National Address imene a President Dr. Lazarus Chakwera akhala kuipereka mnyumba ya malamulo imeneyi idautsa mpungwepungwe kwambiri nyumbayi, chifukwa pofika panopa mene ndikuyankhula pano ndiye kuti munafuna kubuka ndewu mnyumbayi. Leader of the house olemekezeka Richard Kimwendo Banda kuyimirira kuyankha koma mopsa mtima zimene amayankhula phungu oyimira ku Blantyre City South East Osama Suleiman kunena kuti sona imene adapereka president pa 14 February ikuonetsa kuti palibe chilichonse cha zero chimene chidaperekedwa musona imeneyi, akuti imene ayichotse.
Zochitika ndi madaphiri lolemba mpaka lachisanu pa nthawi ya 7 koloko kufikira 8 koloko madzulo pa Channel Africa.
Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Thami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
We go to Nigeria now, where communication experts say the underappreciation of diplomatic culture within Africa is costing the continent lost investments, broken partnerships, and weakened international relevance. This was said over the weekend at the inaugural Diplomacy and Corporate Communications Conference, which is hosted at the American Corner in the University of Port Harcourt, Nigeria. The communicators met to review diplomatic communications in Nigeria and the rest of the continent and the impact that they are having on economic and investment opportunities. Joining us to unpack this further is the convener of the Diplomacy and Corporate Communications Conference, John Best Uche. A very good afternoon to you, sir. Welcome to Africa in Business.
A very good afternoon to you, SABC.
So when we talk about diplomatic culture, what exactly are we making reference to?
Okay, so talking about diplomatic culture, we are actually making reference to the ability of citizens of a particular locale to appreciate or to, embrace, ways of relating better with others. all right? The relationship, being able to relate with others, in a more appreciable and perfect way that would encourage development in all ramifications, especially as it concerns, national development of that particular, a group of or people. So that's it.
And this diplomacy and corporate communications conference, how did that come about? It's quite an interesting concept.
Okay, so the idea, is we came up with that first with the objective of, building diplomatic leaders. All right, we came up with that with the main objective of building diplomatic leaders through, knowledge, skills, and then multilateral engagement. And what that means is that, we've noticed that there is a lot of gaps, all right, in diplomacy. And it's not as if students are not being taught. It's not as if citizens of, Nigeria, for me, being a Nigerian, and or citizens of South Africa, it's not as if they're not being taught, the courses around diplomacy, international relations, international diplomacy, and all of that in school. No, they are being taught, but we lack the practicality of these courses. That is, you're learning something, but you do not know how these things are being applied. You do not know this thing in real sense. All right. So we came up with the idea of diplomacy and corporate communications conference to enlighten these students, and of course, professionals, some of them that are already in diplomacy spaces and all that, to also, reiterate the importance of diplomacy in their everyday conversation. And of course, that will result or that lead to national development. Of course, you know that the UN commemorates World or International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace every April 2024, all right? Every April 24 is commemorated as International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. And the idea is to, let's talk about the theme this year, which talks about uniting for peaceful and sustainable future. We cannot unite, we cannot have a peaceful, future, all right, sustainable future, when we do not have a perfect knowledge of how to, it actually starts with to be diplomatic. All right. How are we relating with people? The way you relate with people determines whether or not, one can qualify you as somebody who is, peaceful, or who is diplomatic enough to actually bring about a peaceful coexistence. So the idea of the corporate communications or diplomacy and corporate communications conference is to actually, let those that are already studying diplomacy as a course, those that have actually studied it and they're out, they're even practicing. So who has been actually called to do.
And who has been in attendance? Who attended the conference?
Okay, so we had students of diplomacy and corporate students of diplomacy, international relations, right? Those in the communication space, and of course, professionals. We had professionals. We had policymakers, like our speakers. Most of our speakers, or a lot of them, they are people already in the space of development space, and they have so much knowledge about diplomacy. All right, I don't know if you know about Ebenezer Wikina. All right, he is a policy shaper. He's a policy shaper, actually the founder of Policy Shapers. All right, then our keynote speaker is also Chukuma Ifrem Okenwa. He is a diplomat himself. He has engaged in multilateral engagement. He has had multilateral engagements, a number of times, and he made a perfect, fit for to be our keynote speaker, and he was. Of course, Dr. Patrick Uduma, also a global leader, was there as our keynote speaker. Then we had panel session where our panelists were, given the chance to, or students or participants were given a chance to ask questions as it concerns how to start, a career in diplomacy, and also, find their path in that same space and all of that. All right, we had simulation. The major part of that session, of that conference, was a simulation session. The major part of it, because we didn't want to do a conventional conference, like, okay, you just come listen to the keynote speakers. Okay, probably you ask questions, in the panels during the panel session, and that's it. No, we come up with the simulation session where our delegates, we had delegates, address issues, real life issues. That is where the practicality of diplomacy is actually, or was actually found. That was where the students or participants actually got to learn diplomacy practically.
And how it manifests itself. Now, one of the things that was raised at the conference is our failure, as far as the African continent is concerned, in diplomatic communications, and how that is costing the continent lost investments, broken partnerships, as well as weakened international relevance. What are some of the examples where we were found wanting?
All right, so this is it. I'm going to say this very briefly, and that is, I said something earlier, citing the theme for this year's International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace, which was actually that uniting. The theme is uniting for a peaceful and sustainable future. So, imagine a situation. All right, imagine a nation that is experiencing conflict, that is experiencing war, that is having issues, serious conflicts. Imagine that nation. How would an investor feel coming into that city, coming into that nation, coming into that country, or into that state to pitch his tent to say, I want to invest my resources in these in this country? Is that ever going to happen? Will the investor ever feel safe doing that? No. And I think that answers your question. Okay, let's cite an instance. All right, let's cite an instance between, okay, let me not go into that. I don't want to mention some of those.
Yes, and actually, our time is going to run up in just a moment, but I really do, before it runs out, want to ask you, out of the 54 African countries, which ones would you say were the top 3 as the worst communicators on the international stage?
Okay, so for now, I would rather appreciate to speak from the side of those that are at least, all right, doing their bit in that regard. All right, at least I see just recently, my call here is not an absolute, is not to say that these African countries do not have all of these things in place, but there is no focus. There is no much attention, given to those institutions. Say, for instance, we have here in the country, Nigeria, we have a Center for Diplomatic Studies and an institute, right? We have a Center for Diplomatic Studies where students are supposed to come learn, not necessarily a conventional setting and all of that, but how much attention is given to that center for students, for people, not students of, it's not being run like the conventional university where they go to study, international relations, diplomacy, and all of that. Okay, so the idea is for these countries to give more attention to the institutes or the training centers, the facilities they've got in place. All right, they've got all of these things in place. I believe, also, that Nigeria is not too bad in that regard, but there is still need for the country to do more and do better in areas of branding, and of course, making it to look better on the global space.
And I think issues of consistency there are also quite important, and positioning of various countries on the international stage, but also perhaps even within ourselves as the African continent. But we're going to have to leave it there this afternoon. John Best Uche, we thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so very much for having me. Thank you so very much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you. That's John Best Uche. He is the convener of the Diplomacy and Corporate Communications Conference, which took place in Nigeria this past weekend. It's gone exactly 4:30 p.m. Central African time. Let's head over to Buntle Headbush with the latest financial indicators.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Good afternoon. In our financial indicators, 1 US dollar is trading at 18 Rand 65 in South Africa. In Botswana, it's at 13 Pula 62. In Namibia, it's trading at 18 Namibian dollars 65. The Zambian kwacha is trading at 28 kwacha 16 to the US dollar. In Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 449. In Ethiopia, at 131 birr 265. In Uganda, it's trading at 3,000 shilling 646, and in Tanzania, it's at 2,000 shilling 689. 1 US dollar in Nigeria is trading at 1,000 naira 608. In Egypt, the dollar is trading at 50 Egyptian pound 916. In Tunisia, it's trading at 2 dinar 992. In Algeria, it's trading at 132 dinar 092. The Moroccan dirham is trading at 9,253 to the US dollar. In Angola, the dollar is trading at 913 kwanza, while the Congolese franc is trading at 2,851 to the US dollar. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,280, platinum at $980, 50 per ounce, while Brent crude oil is at $66.96 a barrel. For any business stories you would like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11 714 4459. I am Wintle Hetbush for Channel Africa Business.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
And standing by with your latest from the business of sport, here is Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Thami. We'll start with this, right? Botswana has secured a momentous achievement, earning the right to host the 2026 World Athletics Relays in Gaborone. So this also marks the first time the country will stage a World Athletics Series event, solidifying its growing reputation as a key player in global athletics. So the event will take place between the 2nd as well as the 3rd of May next year, and will not only showcase Botswana's sporting capabilities, but also provide a significant boost to sports tourism, attracting elite athletes, international media, and also visitors from around the world. Let's speak now to the Botswana Athletics Association Vice President, Oabona Tedzo, to just explain to us how much money and how much resources will be needed to host an event of this magnitude. Mr. Vice President, a very good afternoon to you, and thank you so much for affording us your time to chat to us. Firstly, I have to say congratulations, the country hosting such a big and prestigious event. How much will be needed by the Botswana Association to sort of make this event a success next year?
Yes. Thank you so much, and greetings to you and your listeners. And thanks a lot for congratulating us for being able to have been awarded the rights to host the World Athletics next year in May 2nd to the 3rd. We will need in Pula, we will need over 60 million Pula to successfully host this release. That is, we tend to say, well above $5 million US dollars. So in conversion to Pula, that is over 60 million Pula.
Yeah, that's a lot of money, about, like you said, $5 million US dollars when you convert those pula into US dollars. I wonder, though, Mr. Vice President, where will that money come from? My understanding is that the Botswana government is financially constrained at the moment. They don't have the financial muscle to assist in this regard. Where is that money going to come from?
Well, we expect part of the money to come from the government. That's the biggest sponsor, obviously. But also we currently in a race to lure or with some private companies to be part of us so that they can invest on the release. But I think the largest fraction of the budget will be from the government. But here and there, we obviously need assistance of the private sector. The confederations of African athletics also, we expect that they should help, but the largest fraction will obviously be from the government.
Also imagine, Mr. Vice President, that the 60 million pulas, in this case $5,000 is something that might just also increase, with costs also increasing as preparations continue. I don't think that money is going to be set and stone as 60 million pulas or $5 million.
Yes, obviously, looking at the way inflation is ongoing, we expect that this may increase because the economy is not really stable globally. But obviously, we'll do our best so that we at the end of the day we deliver the successful championships. We really cannot just hold our arms and just hope that manna will fall from heaven. We really need to do our best so that we deliver where there's a need. Obviously, we also seek for assistance from within the neighboring countries where they can help. Surely, because this is not only for Botswana, it's for Africa, because this is the first of its kind in Africa. So we really need to make sure that as Africa we unite to deliver this successful event.
Absolutely. Of course, we do understand that Botswana will be the first ever African country to host a competition of this magnitude when you look at the World Relay Championships. Mr. Vice President, as we round off this conversation, let's talk about the economic impact this competition, the hosting of this competition will have on the country of Botswana, because I can imagine it's going to be far-reaching economic benefits when this competition comes to your country next year. Let's talk to us about that.
Yeah, obviously, we expect that this competition boosts our economy because we are talking about the hotels being full at the time. We are talking about the flights. We know that our flights connect through South Africa, we are Tambo. We expect them to the athletes or the participants, they'll be flying to Botswana via South Africa, that they shop in South Africa. They also use the airlines which pass through South Africa. We expect the taxi industry as well to make a killing out of this. We expect the street vendors to make a killing out of this because, like we said, this is the first of its kind. We expect the world to be here because everyone would want to come and see the Akane Simbini, the Little Tebogo, the Noah Lyles, and you name all these top named athletes. You cannot afford to miss a moment to see them. So obviously the economy will really boost at the end of the day, but it calls for us to collectively work towards this because we cannot do it alone. We need everyone. As we know that currently there are some airlines from South Africa. You talk about Airlink. You're talking about the Ethiopian Airlines. You're talking Air Botswana. They obviously make a kill because they are expecting the world to descend to Botswana.
Wabona Tetso is the Vice President of the Botswana Athletics Association. Thank you so much for your time, sir, for outlining exactly what will be expected of the Botswana Athletics Association in hosting this event, also alluding to the importance of government being involved as well as the private sector being involved in helping the Botswana Athletics Association in hosting the World Relays Athletics Championships next year between the 2nd as well as the 3rd of May. That's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Mosibu D. Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thank you to Musibudi Makura keeping us updated on the business of sport. It's gone exactly 4:39 Central African time. You'll find us on all the various social media platforms on X, Instagram and YouTube. We are at Channel Africa 1. On Instagram Facebook at Channel Africa. You can also listen to us on DSTV Audio Bouquet Channel 802. If you have any stories that you believe would be of interest to our listeners, both on the African continent or in the diaspora, do send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za.
Connecting Africa to the world. Africa in Business with Thami Ngubeni brings you the latest insights on Africa's economy.
Now, Rwanda has arrested 3 top officials from the country's Mines, Petroleum and Gas Board, along with 4 businessmen suspected of corruption and abuses of power. According to Rwanda's investigation bureau, The trio, Augustin Ruomushana, John Kanyangira, and Richard Nyongabo, were being jailed in the capital of Kigali without giving a date for their arrests. For more on the story, we joined on the line by Channel Africa correspondent in Rwanda, Silvanus Karemere. A very good afternoon to you, Silvanus.
Thank you. Good afternoon to you too.
So what can you tell us about the story as well as the arrests? When exactly were they arrested and how long have they been on their trail?
Yeah, thank you. We didn't know when exactly, on which date these, three officials were arrested, but the information regarding their arrest was made public on last Saturday when the Rwanda Investigation Bureau, which is in charge of, conducting some following up on what is happening, especially to do with those people who commit some crimes and offense, so to say, was made public. In this communique, the Rwanda Bureau of Investigation Bureau, they mentioned, those three people that we have just mentioned, including Augustin Ngubeni, who was the Mineral Market and Strategy Division Manager at Rwanda Mining Board, as well as his two colleagues, including John Kanyangira, the division manager in charge of mineral traceability, and Richard Nyongabo, who was division manager in charge of digital information and mining, cadastre. So the RIB communique did not disclose much more about when and how they were arrested, but the communique said that these people were arrested on accusations of, involving in what RIB said was corruption, related cases. We didn't know what exactly this corruption was all about. When did they commit these crimes and so on and so forth. We tried back then to actually ask those people. They did not want to disclose. And as they speak now on Monday, we don't know whether or not these people have been tabled before the court of law. But what we know, they should appear, according to the law, they should appear at least before 72 hours. So we are still, following up what is transpiring in the scenes. But that's what I could disclose as I speak now.
So as we stand, are you saying that we have got no idea what it is that they'll be charged with?
Yeah, well, what we know, they said corruption, but corruption is a very huge and wide terminology. There is no clear disclosure on why they were arrested. I mean, on which specific cases or accusations or crimes they may have committed, because remember, these are top leaders in the Rwanda Mining Board, board in charge of very important divisions in this big company. We are still waiting to see what exactly is contained in the sheet of charges, but we really don't know as of now. But what I can perhaps add on what we are saying now is one has always been firm when it comes to corruption charges. We've seen a number of people, including leaders in the high positions, getting arrested and aligned before the court of law, and finally some even have been put into prison. So it is still very early, of course, and I can't speculate because I haven't seen any sheet of charges against these people. But what we know, they have been arrested, and the Rwanda Bureau of Investigation has been calling upon the public to avoid any acts that could be leading them into corruption and the other related cases, so to say.
All right, Silvanus, thank you very much for that update regarding the arrests of the 4 businessmen as well as 3 top officials from the country's Mines, Petroleum and Gas Board. As he says, it is a waiting game as it stands. Thank you very much, Silvanus.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's our Channel Africa correspondent in Rwanda, Silvanus Karemere, taking us to exactly 4:45.
Stay ahead with Africa in Business, where Thami Ngubeni unpacks your go-to source for Africa's economic trends and development.
Now, during a recent visit to Johannesburg's central business district, South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa acknowledged the city's state of dysfunction and announced the formation of a working group to assist the mayor. However, there is widespread public skepticism about the move, given a history of government promises that have failed to deliver real change. The key question now is how can the city of Johannesburg improve service delivery and rebuild public trust, all while grappling with severe rebuild, financial pressures and governance challenges. Channel Africa's business reporter Innocent Samosa has more.
The city once hailed as Africa's economic hub, Johannesburg, is now deep in crisis due to infrastructure decay, lack of basic service delivery, and financial mismanagement. Associate in Dispute Resolution Practice spokesperson Charles Green outlines legal frameworks or processes in place to address non-performance by municipal officials in relation to their official duties.
The responsibilities and functions of municipal officials are contained in a few pieces of legislation, right? Which basically says this is your mandate. A useful starting point is Section 195 of the Constitution, which basically provides basic values, principles that govern public administration. And these apply throughout all spheres of government, but also include your municipal context. So in the municipal context, the national legislation that's enacted to ensure that these principles are adhered to, and it provides for further powers and responsibilities of municipal officials, is the Municipal Finance Management Act, right? So essentially it provides a basis for this is your mandate, and it also says, look, if you fail to reach your mandate, these are the consequences. An example is Section 32 of the MFMA, which provides that, look, municipal officials, you will be liable for unauthorized expenditure. So essentially, money that is spent in absence of an empowering provision or in absence of legislation actually allowing you to spend that money.
He says that although they are protected against liabilities to third parties, the municipality can still recover losses and damages caused by negligence.
Municipal officials are protected against liability to third parties for loss and damages that result from bona fide exercise of power or the performance of a function under Section 175 of the MFMA that does not prevent the municipality from recovering losses or damages that have been caused by deliberate or negligent acts. So very important judgment, and it actually provides an additional layer of accountability for municipal officials. And they'll have to think, quite hard about the risks of acting in a manner that deliberately or negligently causes loss to a municipality.
But what legal tools or reforms can state-owned entities use to improve service delivery and public trust given current financial and governance constraints? Charles Green explains.
So state-owned entities provide vital goods and services to the country at large, such as electricity, water and transportation. Over the years, we've unfortunately seen a steady decline of SOEs, which has inevitably resulted in the failure to deliver basic goods and services to the majority of the country. These problems stem from lack of financial power and a lack of good governance, which we saw quite explicitly at state capture. The issue with the lack of finance is that SOEs do not have the financial power to expand, maintain, and upgrade critical infrastructure. This was evident last year in Johannesburg, with the relevant public institutions that are mandated to provide basic service delivery confirming that they do not have the necessary funds to commission all the required upgrades. The consequences, obviously, if unattended, are dire. For example, load shedding, day zero in Johannesburg, where there may not be any water.
Green says the relationship between SOEs and municipalities needs to be mended.
The first is the interplay between SOEs and the municipality. The relationship between SOEs and municipalities needs to be mended, and appropriate mechanisms need to be put in place to ensure that payments are made efficiently and properly from municipalities to SOEs. For example, it was estimated in December 2021 that municipalities across the country owed Eskom an amount of 107 billion. And then the effect, obviously, is a crippling effect on Eskom because they still need to deliver outputs, but they don't get the financial money that they actually owed.
As Johannesburg grapples with growing public frustration, experts believe that stronger accountability, legal reforms, and better collaboration between municipalities and state-owned entities are critical to reversing the city's decline. For now, residents are left hoping that the promises made translated into real action before Africa's once proud economic hub falls even further into crisis. For Channel Africa News, I am Innocent Samosa in Johannesburg.
Africa in Business on Channel Africa.
It's gone exactly 10 minutes to 5 p.m. Central African time as we turn our focus now to the markets in Ethiopia. The Ethiopian financial markets have had a busy 3 days. Ethio Telecom, which is Ethiopia's state-owned telecommunications provider, made the country's first initial public offering, an IPO, and the National Bank of Ethiopia has introduced a new loan classification system. For more on this and other stories, we're joined this afternoon by Merit Fikirahanis, founder and CEO of Pragma Investment Advisory. A very good afternoon to you, Merit. Good to have you with us once again.
Always pleasure to be on the show. Good afternoon to you too.
So let's start first with Ethio Telecoms. Their IPO debut sold just 10.7% of shares on the first day. How would you describe this type of performance?
So the performance was the performance was not what the market was expecting. It would obviously the market was expecting much more subscription, more than what has been availed the day before the last week. Well, so it's a couple of reasons, to be honest. The first one is that, just to give you a bit of a context for your listeners. So the government decided to sell 10% of the Ethio Telecom shares to the public in the hope that to ignite the capital market as Ethiopia relaunches capital market after 5 decades, and the Ethiopian Securities Exchange is already operating right now. So as part of that, in order to ignite the retail investors, so the government intention initially was just purely to focus only Ethiopian local retail investors, right? So, and they have been advertising in terms of debuting the IPO for almost 4 months, around 121 days in total, and they have already garnered and subscribed around 47,377 shareholders so far, and all of the shares were issued on its platform, which is the Ethio Telecom mobile money platform called Telebir, and it has garnered around 3.2 billion birr, which is 10% of the initial debut of 30 billion birr capital, which was the plan to mobilize, right? So to be honest with you, so all this exercise has been a very good case study, both for the regulator, both for the government, and also for the nascent exchange as well. But given this is the first time that people are subscribing on a share via mobile money. So the anticipation was big, but so the CEO she came in, she said, okay, we're going to revise our approach in terms of we'll be inviting institutional investors such as banks, pension funds, and insurance companies, and also other private companies as well. And mind you, the shares were limited, and no one individual cannot buy more than close to 1 million birr worth of shares, right? So that also by itself put a limitation, and all the intention was since Ethio Telecom is a public company, is a 130 years old company, and the government first intention was to make sure that most of the retail investors subscribe, because it's a public asset, and they don't want to have they don't want to skew the investment or the prospect of the investment only from only institutional investors, where they take most of the shares. But however, they're saying that right now they wanted to take a different approach.
So let's take a look at the National Bank of Ethiopia. They've introduced a new loan classification system, and I believe commercial banks are scrambling to meet these tougher loan regimes that have been rolled out by the National Bank of Ethiopia. Can you talk us through some of those?
Yes, so that is part of the reforming the financial sector of Ethiopia, right? So mind you, Ethiopia in the past 30 years, I mean, the private sector, the private banking sector is 33 years old, and it has not reached the level of Basel II in terms of standard. We're still in Basel 1, right? So as part of the transition and also reforming the financial sector, the central bank has introduced two fundamental that will fund a change how the credit would be registered. The first one is the risk-based adequacy requirement and also risk assessment and early warning system. So it is a transition to a Basel II system, and this is the market and the banking industries, they're finding it very surprising, because imagine literally every bank, all the 32 banks, including the state-owned 2 banks and also 30 private banks, and that is a 3 billion birr balance sheet, need to revise itself as per this. So currently the directives are in draft level. Already the industry pundits and also the industry participants are saying that we need a bit of time, and this is a part of a grand picture where the central bank is opening up the financial sector for foreign players after 5 decades. So they want to make sure that everybody is in the same lane, everybody is talking in the same language before they open the banking sector for foreign players. So yes, the time is a huge concern, and in our view as well, it's going to take a lot of time. Mind you, we're talking about the entire country's banking balance sheet. So if the plan is to do it as per this directive, most of the balance sheet of the banks will be in NPL, and non-performing loans. So given that we are in a very tight monetary policy and all this, I think, yes, having a good amount of time is fair to ask.
All right. Thank you very much, Merid Fikir-Hannes, for that update coming out of Ethiopia on the markets today. We thank you very much for your contribution.
Pleasure to be on the show.
It always is. Thank you so much. He's founder and CEO of Pragma Investment Advisory. He takes us to exactly 4:57 as we make way for Vue d'Afrique avec Joël. Bonjour Joël.
Bonjour Thami.
Ça
Bonjour
va?
à tous les auditeurs. Je vais très bien, et toi?
Comme ci, comme ça.
Un peu?
Oui, comme ci, comme ça.
Que si,
I'm a little bit fluid.
Oh,
but apart from that.
Tu as attrapé la grippe.
Oui, un petit peu,
un
beaucoup.
Petit peu. Eh bien, bonne guérison. Bonjour à tous les auditeurs de Channel Africa et particulièrement de Vue d'Afrique. Restez connectés parce que tout à l'heure sur Vue d'Afrique, il s'agira des réactions contrastées après la signature de la déclaration de principe sur la paix en RDC. Nous parlerons également de l'Ouganda qui déclare officiellement la fin de l'épidémie d'Ebola, mais aussi de la Namibie. La nouvelle présidente annonce la gratuité de l'enseignement à partir de 2026. Les détails, c'est dans la grande actualité de Vue d'Afrique. Merci donc de rester connectés. Merci, Thami.
Merci, Joël. And that's how we also come to the end of Africa in Business for this afternoon. Thank you very much to our team, Maboboloka, our producer, as well as our technical and online team as well. It's gone exactly 4:58. In just a moment's time, we hand the reins over now for your French news.
un magazine des actualités en français sur Channel Africa. Rendez-vous du lundi au vendredi avec Joël Mouteba sur Channel Africa de 15h à 16h, temps universel. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
Bonjour à tous et merci de vous connecter sur notre site internet le www.channelafrica.co.za pour suivre Vue d'Afrique, le magazine d'actualité en français, actualité africaine en français sur Channel Africa. Nous émettons